met through Moloko, which is a studio agents. And Simon at that point worked for Moloko. He was one of their engineers. And that's how we met. And he's my chief engineer that I work with, and mixer.
What I love about working with Guy is that we don't mess around. We're here to work, and we work quick, and at the end of the day, we leave with something done. I think that's a powerful thing with music, is to not be messing around with ideas. We're completing them.
Back in the 90s, when I started making records, you'd pick a Neve. It would be Neve VRs back then. So all the Robbie records pretty much were recorded on Neves, I think, pretty much. I didn't have a Neve in my studio because I was offered a EMI board. Me being a Beatle nut, it was really hard to say no to that board. But I always had Neve outboard. Even when I had the EMI board, I always had, what are they called?
You've got 1081s in Sleeper 8?
Yep. Yeah, 1081s.
So I started at a large studio in Australia, and we were lucky enough to have an orchestral hall and a couple of nice consoles, one being an 88R. And I always say to people, it was the most flexible console I've ever worked on, in that it was really hard to mess up getting sounds on it, because it sounds excellent, headroom for days. EQ is incredibly musical. The compressors are some of my favorites I've ever heard, just the channel compressors on them. From there, using channel strips of the 1081s, 1073s, 1092s, and then we had a studio in Byron Bay actually there that had one of the original 1073 consoles. It means that going forward, my reference point for what equipment sounds like, unfortunately, I have to reference them as the best in the business. And it's, across the eras, that's always been reliable. As, from a technical point of view and a musical point of view, it makes my life easier. I've
had a sleeper in London for a long time, so since 2002. It's got all of my gear that I've collected over the years for, I don't know, at least 25 years in there. So pianos, guitars, amps, amazing microphones, drum kits, there's percussion. It's got an amazing array of gear, and it sounds really great and people love it. And I'm really pleased that it's used by such an array of different musicians, from Frank Ocean to Jack Antonoff to 1975, so it's an amazing alumni of people who have used it.
Guy might be modest with his collection in terms of, they might not say how great it is, but everything is in there, it's the best. You've got nice mics, nice front end, the instruments all sound incredible. It's, everything, there's no dogs, it's all really, really nice stuff. And so to work in that environment, it's taking out a little bit of the guesswork in getting the sounds that people want. So from my perspective working there, we can be quick. You don't have to second guess that initial setup. It's great, we've tested that. Let's just move ahead and capture some music.
The London studio was originally my space, and then I soon realized that people really wanted to book it, and I started sharing it. And then what's happened over the years is its reputation has grown. It's increasingly difficult for me to get into my own space because people block book it. I needed somewhere else, and that's another reason that I'm here. I wanted to be able to carry on working when I wanted to work. I was restricted to how big I could make it because we're in a national park here and they restrict new buildings. And the other thing we had to consider was we had to make it look like an existing building in the area. So we based it on a chapel, a tin tabernacle it's called. So it's got a bit of a chapel feel, but I also wanted it to be multi-use. So it's got a little stage, so I do little gigs in here. I have about 20 people in the audience, but it's also a nightclub. If you take everything out, which I did the other day for a big party, so it's got 3 different uses. It was a studio, a nightclub, and a venue.
Without that high quality front end that's reliable and familiar, you start to guess the sounds instead of being able to listen to something you know and trust. By just having something very familiar, reliable, that sounds excellent every time there, we can focus on the musical aspect of it. And it's like sailing without a compass, without a good preamp, which is why when Guy was looking to build this place, the first thing that came to mind was, well, we need a Neve front end. The brief was to keep it simple. We don't have all the extra instruments filling up a room here. It's about the space being clean and quick. And first choice at that point is like, okay, how can we get top quality front end in? And the Neve OPX had just come out and it checked every box. It's familiar sound. It's got the recallability built into it as well, which is for us everything we need, just quick and easy right there in 2U. At this stage, the OPXs are it. They do everything that we need in here. I've never questioned them, and that's for me is something that always sells me on wanting to use it again. That I know the sound. We both know the sounds of what a vintage Neve should sound like. What even the modern Neves should sound like. And the moment we put them in here and did the test recordings, everything sounded familiar immediately. It was that, okay, these are doing everything I would expect from a 1073 to 1081, that era of Neve, but with the clarity of a modern Neve in that there's no surprises with the 1073 OPXs. Plug any mic in, whether it's our dynamics, the condensers, the ribbons, and I've never had an issue with gain, additional noise. They just work, and it's the highest compliment to the design of them is that, I'm not saying this because you're interviewing this, it's genuinely that you plug them in and on everything and you're like, that's great, it works, no question. I mean, the UA equipment's great because it's still +4 reference level. For us, we're running the system as an analog front end, quite traditional analog front end, analog to digital conversion. Once we've decided on this is where things are, that recall will go in and open template, gains are set, ready to go. And it's a big thing when you might be changing something one day and then want to set your default back up. You don't have to then set your levels again. We've tested that, it works. So beyond the recall element, which no one else has on a top quality front end unit, it's the fact that we can then access everything from the front panel. So we've got the tie lines around the studio for the band at the back, or if we're recording in the area up this end. But if we ever want to change something quickly, I can just plug into the front and hit front, and then all of a sudden we've got access to mic line, DIs straight on the front without having to run cables around the studio. And so it's obviously been designed with the modern studio in mind that things can change like that. We might want to work where we are at the computer, or we might want to work in a separate room, and it's got all that thought about it.
I've made a record here. We've done a whole album here. So I've been doing that, and I plan to do more of that.